Hello world, it's me, Daniel. So, this is the time of year when I become increasingly stressed, I suppose, and not necessarily, I'm doing okay right now, but I'm not just a student, I'm also an instructor, so I have a whole bunch of those, sort of double assignments to do. I just have to keep track of a lot. And, I always want to make video. I always want to produce, but just this is the time of the year when I'm going to be the most pressed. So I wanted to make this video just quickly, it's not scripted or anything. I just wanted to say a few things. These days, I've been increasingly disappointed with the way things are going. In the world, particularly in my country, but just, around the world in general, there's a lot of bad things going on. Particularly as news footage begins to collect about the humanitarian and military crises in Yemen, and of course the looming threat of North Korea, which is looming ever harder due to the fact that we now have, both of our countries have presidents who don't know how to behave. They just don't know how to behave in public. They don't know how to be mature. They don't know how to be diplomatic. It's nuts. And then, of course, there's the issues in my own country with white supremacist rallies and alleged child molesters running for Congress, and the dominant political party throwing their support behind him, even though they used to be the first party to condemn sexual misconduct. Even alleged sexual misconduct. They impeached Bill Clinton, for God's sakes. I don't know what they're doing throwing their support behind Roy Moore. And, of course, the policies that are coming out of this administration are just incomprehensible and reprehensible. I don't know how anyone could possibly justify the horrific tax bills that are coming out of both the House and the Senate. The Senate bill will inordinately tax the lower and middle classes immediately. The House bill will not do so immediately, but will do so later, and immediately affects me by raising my taxes by 2.5 times. And there's the net neutrality issue. Oh good! That's still a thing that needs to be fought for. Oh my god, I don't understand. And so this holiday season there's a lot to not be happy about. And I'm not here to suggest that you should be happy regardless. Honestly, no, I'm not. Because I don't think you should be. I certainly won't be. I think that anyone who is truly a patriot, who wants to see this country do well, not only as a country, but for all of its constituents, the greatest good for the greatest number, I think anyone who feels that way should have the right to express that. To have freedom of emotion and expression. To feel certain ways, perhaps negatively, even at a positive time of year, about these issues that affect all of us. Perhaps not equally, perhaps not immediately, but they do affect all of us. And just so much of it is just people not listening. People being bound to party ideology or to the interests of people who fund them, rather than the people they were elected to represent, and the policies that are just trying to erase the previous administration's policies are just staggeringly petty. It's just an ego war between parties and between individual presidents, and I don't understand how there are so many people who can just justify this as the status quo, right? The natural order of things. This should not be happening. This isn't normal. And we have a state in our country where the two-party system they've gotten so interested in competing with each other that they've forgotten about morals. They forget how to be honest. They forget how to craft good policy because all they want to do is market themselves. And particularly, they want to market themselves as the opposite of the other party. And the truth is, as Americans, we don't need the opposite. We don't need two diametrically opposed parties. In fact, that's incredibly unhealthy for our democracy. Like, you look at countries that have more than two dominant parties, like Britain or Canada, they have parties that will agree with each other on some things. Because they can afford to. Because it's not just between one or the other. There's more options. There's more freedom for the country to have their interests represented. And, we talk about 50% of the country even in this incredibly high-stakes election in 2016, 50% of the country, the U.S., did not vote. And the reason is not just due to the fact that our voting system is just miraculously flawed. You know, we have restrictions, and they're increasing, where they're just preventing democracy. It really is. They're anti-democratic measures in voting with the Electoral College. It's been around forever, but seriously anti-democratic, just meant to disrupt the democratic will. It's not just about voting restrictions, it's about the fact that so many people in this country did not like either candidate, did not like either party. Okay, when you have two ideological extremes competing with each other, they get more and more extreme in order to compete better with each other, in order to not have anything in common, so that people are either choosing one or the other. The problem is, people don't work like that. People aren't just one thing or the other thing. Most people exist in the middle. Most people have a firm grasp of what reality is, or at least a firmer grasp than constant ideological competition allows these politicians to have. Like, the majority of the Republican Party doesn't endorse child molesters for Congress, and they don't endorse white supremacy. And the majority of Democrats don't want their representatives to be in bed with the big banks, or they don't want, you know, a total communist revolution, which, by the way, the Democratic representatives don't want either. Anyway, I suppose my point is that if you're too busy trying to compete with people, you're not doing your job well. This country, in any society, has always been about both competition and cooperation. Society can't exist without both. Competition enables growth and progress in often, if done right and honestly, the direction of the greatest good for the greatest number. Cooperation makes sure that those policies are the greatest good for the greatest number. It helps us think collectively as a society. And I've got to say, with a lot of the ideologies floating around where it's just supposed to be looking out for number one, every person for themselves, vote in your own best interest, buy in your own best interest, don't think about how it will affect the rest of society, the rest of the world, I gotta say, that's simply not how society works. No society has ever been able to sustain itself when all of its citizens just look out for themselves and don't give a crap about other people, because we are social beings, okay? Society is about living in a collective for collective benefit. And if we turn a blind eye to the other members of our collective, we don't know what the collective benefit is. And we don't progress in the direction of the greatest good for the greatest number. Okay? So now we have people who are voting, you know, and buying in their own self-interest, they think, but in the long run it'll turn against them. People who voted in this Republican Congress, especially the middle and working class, who thought they were going to get a fairer deal, a better deal for, you know, themselves. You know, like the coal industry, the dying coal industry, who thought that the Republican Party would save them, you know, with their middle class and working class roots. They're about to get screwed. They're about to get just annihilated, okay? Because these tax bills don't benefit them. And I hope so much that we are actually learning these lessons, but then again, I hope that in 2015. And we didn't learn those lessons. Okay? And I can sit here and say, well, you know, Clinton won the popular vote, so it's the system that failed us, it's not us that failed our country. But the other thing is, then Congress. We did fail our country. There was a huge just uprising of insular, egocentric, ignorant of fact thinking in this country. And I wouldn't even call it thinking, I'd call it belief. And beliefs are dangerous if they're not grounded in reality. Historically speaking, competitive beliefs are probably more dangerous than collaborative beliefs, cooperative beliefs, because we live in societies. We've always been social. As humans, as a species, we have always been social. And if you have strong beliefs that emphasize competition between members of the same collective especially, it strains the fabric of society. It strains our unified nature. And that's another thing, by the way. Pointing out inequality is not trying to be divisive. It's trying to point out that we have a history of division and that it should be addressed. Because if we don't address it, we're ignoring it. And when we ignore it, people suffer. And that's my main thing. Because I know in my heart of hearts that everything that the Trump administration and this Republican Congress are trying to put through is reversible. Okay? The policies are reversible. Unfortunately, that's kind of a product of our two-party system, that once the other party gains power, they try to undo the other party's agenda before advancing their own, and then it just seesaws back and forth, and that creates massive social instability. A person I know who's always been sort of, socially conservative has been looking at healthcare recently and been like, the more I think about it, the more we should go to single payer, because we can't have these diametrically opposed parties gaining power and seesawing the country back and forth between stability and instability when it comes to their basic right to life and to health. And he's right, I agree with him. And it's damaging to individuals, to individual livelihoods, to individual psychologies. Okay, you're living under a tremendous amount of psychological strain if you have that kind of instability in your life. And it's damaging to the collective, of course. And so, yeah, I mean, everything's reversible, right? Just like the Trump administration is proving, okay? Because they're trying to reverse everything that the Obama administration ever tried to do without thinking about what the consequences will be. It's marketing. It's just they're trying to establish a brand that, especially Trump himself, who is just engaged in this ego war. He's probably looks at his own, approval ratings every morning and been like, oh, what can I do? And then he tries to do something to rise those numbers up by being anti-Obama. And the truth is, hey, guess what? Obama was democratically elected by both the popular and the electoral college vote twice, and you can't even claim that once. So maybe that's why your approval rating is down. In any case, and the policies, right? So the healthcare repeal and replace, they failed. Why? Because they were bad policies. They were horrific policies. These tax bills should be the same way. Okay, it's becoming like a regressive tax, almost. They should be failing, but the power structure is too ingrained, right? And this latest thing, right? Trump doing away with Obama-era policies on requiring airlines to disclose baggage fees ahead of time. He's doing away with those regulations so that airlines can hide their baggage fees. What's the fucking point? There's no... How does that help anyone? We all know that baggage fees are a thing. We know that they exist. Especially doing this around the holidays is especially stupid, because we are all about to take trips back home, right? So if the baggage fees become hidden, and then we find out that they raised them behind our backs, guess what? There's going to be a serious market response. And, we're all going to find out at the same time. It's just idiotic what they're trying to do. They're not thinking. It's not thought. This is not policy. This is marketing. It's ego. It's not productive at all for a society. And I don't understand what they think they're doing that is going to better society. And it's especially frustrating, on an individual level. Everyone here is affected by it, because we have policies that are being pushed through, and anyone who is not just so cynical about government that they just don't try to act to stop it. All of us have a new issue that we have to call our representatives about every week. In a representative democracy, I should not have to call my representatives to stop them every week from destroying the country. I should not have to call my representatives and please represent our interests like you were elected to do. That should not be something that I have to constantly be on a week-by-week basis in charge of doing. And if you're saying, well, that's democracy for you. No, that's oligarchy for you. That's the result of people wanting to keep their power so badly that they're willing to vote against the interests of their constituents and for the interests of their campaign donors, because they're the ones that really finance their campaigns and allow them to keep their power. And my question is, and I brought this up in my latest blog post on the Phos Phoenix, link below to the Phos Phoenix and to the specific blog post about the GOP House tax bill. I brought this up that I wonder what they think they're saving their power for. These politicians who think that they need to vote against the interests of their constituents and for the interests of their campaign donors so that their campaign donors continue to finance their campaigns so that they, the representatives, can keep their power. I wonder if they keep voting against their constituents with their power, I wonder what they think they're going to use their power for. I wonder why they want to keep their power so badly if they keep having to abuse it in order to keep it. I'm wondering how they would reconcile that in their own heads. And I wonder if they realize the cost. I don't think they do. I think they're thinking short term. I think they're not, the current way that elections work prohibits in a certain way, de facto prohibits politicians from thinking progressively, from forward thinking, from being proactive instead of reactive. It's not democracy. This is not what a democracy should be. This is not normal. We should be fighting against this. And there are political campaigns and political parties that are dedicated to trying to fix this system. And they're being ignored because people are just happy with the status quo, or they don't know that they aren't happy with the status quo. Their problems are being scapegoated onto other groups, other types of people, and again, it's all competition, it's all marketing, and it's deception, it's a smokescreen. The problem is not reality. Reality is something that we have to adapt to. The problem is that we substitute ideas for our reality. We blame other people that aren't to blame. Okay? Diversity is not our problem. Diversity is a fact. It's a fact of life and a principle that our country was founded upon. Even the privileged elite that were the founding fathers and mothers of our country, and by the way, it's usually just fathers because that's privilege for you, even that group of people knew that they wanted this country to function for the greatest good, for the greatest number. I don't understand how, especially the Republican Party, who claims to be so patriotic and so cemented to the original ideals of this country, I don't know how they justify what they're doing. In any case, I'm not worried about the permanence of these policies. Okay? That's not my concern. I know that everything's reversible. Okay? Most things are, at least. They're difficult to reverse, but they're reversible. If we get a Democrat in the White House and a Democratic-run Congress, or at least a Congress and a White House populated by people who aren't paranoid, delusional, egocentric narcissists, only worried about their own reputation and their own power. Okay? If we manage to do that, then we can have a country that works for us. Then America will truly be great again. We will be a representative democracy that we want to be, and that we set out to be. Okay? There's nothing about these policies are really that permanent. My concern is not the fact that they're permanent, because they aren't. My concern is what happens in the meantime. My concern is that people are suffering until we fix it. And the further away we get from fixing it, the longer it's going to take to fix it, and the longer people will suffer in the meantime. My problem is also that we turn a blind eye to that suffering because of this competitive ideology that we have in this country, where it's just like, just look out for yourself. If you're fine, then everything's fine, and don't vote or worry about it. That's not how a society functions. We function socially. Society. Social. It's multiple of us. These policies have wide-ranging effects. And now with these tax bills, you're truly seeing it. Everyone who thought, oh, well, as long as the middle class gets, has, stable taxes or gets a tax cut, then we can afford to give the rich a tax cut as well, and to have their taxes not go up, and wherever the consequences go, they go. Well, now the middle class is shrinking, the working class is growing, and now both the middle and the working class are getting screwed. Publicly. And the rich are getting the payday. You should be worried about this. Okay? This is now no longer a covert, but an overt threat to the collective, this competitive mindset. These trickle-down economic theories which have never truly worked. And again, it's not about it's not about how permanent they are. It's about how long they last until they're not in place anymore. And how many people suffer how much. And which people, by the way. Because they're going to be the same people, plus a few more. Right? There are a few privileged people who will not be so privileged anymore with these policies, who are going to get screwed based on these policies. But the majority of the people who are affected by these just bass-backwards policies that are just not based in reality, they're just ideological or profitable for representatives. The majority of people affected by these policies will be people who always get the shaft. Lower socioeconomic status individuals, who most of them got there really through no fault of their own. Racial and ethnic minorities. Alternative genders and sexualities, including, by the way, women who are the depowered gender. these are the individuals who, historically in our society, have always gotten the short end of the stick, who have always had to fight the most to keep what they have, and the fact that they have to do so much to just keep living is abhorrent to me, and I'm surprised it's not abhorrent to other people. It's what John Rawls called the veil of ignorance, okay? It's this thing where everyone forgets that just as easily, in sort of a metaphysical sense, their consciousness could have been born into any body. By mere lottery of birth, you were born into the body and into the family and into the socioeconomic position that you are in today. When we're in constant competition against life to just sustain ourselves and against other people in terms of an ideological mindset, we forget so easily that we could have been born into the physical world as someone who just started out with fewer resources, as someone who is subject to physical and psychological violence based on the color of their skin, or by who they love, or by what gender they identify as. And we forget about those people's plights if we're just worried about our own. People forget morality when they're told to just focus on themselves, because morality is by nature collective. When people talk about good and evil, right, even in a, black and white dichotomous like narrative, those two sides are by definition collective good and collective evil. Morality is defined collectively. You're not born with an innate sense of morality. You learn it from a collective religion or a collective society. So good is collective good. Evil is collective evil, which probably means they're acting for their own personal good, for their own personal power, their own personal gain. And we have entire sections of the populace who are being trained to think that that's what life's about. And it's not. If you think that's what life's about, get out of our society, because you're not good for our society. The rest of society wants to work together to be better. You want to make your own way? You want to just care about yourself? Well then go. Get an island. Because we don't want you here. And you don't want to be here, so get out. We'll be over here working together to make the world better. You can make your own world better, alone, by yourself. And again, how many people are suffering right now just because our policy-making apparatus, right, our problem-solving mechanism, has forgotten how to think. All they know is how to believe, how to spout party lines, how to market themselves. They don't know how to think anymore. And again, I love to end my videos on a positive note. I got nothing for you, okay? We have to end our society on a positive note in order to end my video, which is a representation of society, on a positive note. So instead I'm going to end my video with the way that I've ended my classes. I teach Intro to Sociology, and I pretty much always end with the same advice. If you never take a sociology class again, please remember these three things. First, be attentive. Be aware. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Because if you don't, one day those events will affect you, and you could have been prepared for them. Second thing is, be critical. Put those events into their proper context. Not all news is fake news. Not all dramatized and sensationalized news is fake news. And not all poorly delivered news is fake news. There's information to be gained. Yes, put news in its context, right? Put the events that you are attentive to and aware of in their proper context. But glean information from it. Learn from it. And look deeper, look beyond the surface, okay? Don't just accept the ideological explanation for why things are happening the way they are. You have to hone your BS meter, okay, when it comes to information. The third thing is, please, please, be empathetic, okay? Living in a society, learning the sociological perspective is all about putting yourself outside of your own place in society, thereby looking objectively at where you are in society and being able to look more objectively at where others are in society and what society is doing. Okay, empathy is a basic human construct. It is taught, but it's also innate, and we have to know that that's one of our greatest gifts, is the ability to sympathize and empathize with other human beings. And also to try to act on that empathy, not just on an individual level, but on a policy level. We have to not just compete with each other, or compete as a society with other societies. We have to realize that, to a certain extent, All of us on this planet are in this together. And there are collective consequences for not acting collectively. So be empathetic, all right? Try to feel the pain of others. The sociological imagination is about taking yourself out of your own shoes, at the very least. Even if you don't put yourself into someone else's shoes, just taking off your own shoes and looking around, okay? It's about seeing the normal as bizarre. And it's about the ability to connect your own personal biography to the larger social history, and being able to analytically do so for other individuals. Connect their biography to the larger social history that we all share. Those three things will allow you to act not only in an informed way for your own best interests, but for the best interests of the collective that we would all have a hard time existing in without thinking about ourselves as a collective. So I've blabbed on for long enough. I'm sorry that this video is not necessarily focused or scripted or fun, but it's been way past time for me to just make a point. You know, and I'm troubled, okay? These videos are about what's going on not just in life in general, but in my life. And in my life, I'm troubled by how life in general is going for other people. You know? Even with my tax increases, I'll probably be okay. My needs are few. But again, empathy. You know, I can't turn a blind eye to suffering. And it frustrates me that even when I don't turn a blind eye to suffering, that the structure of our society and our government is set up so that I can barely do anything about it. Right now, the most I can do is call my representatives, and I have been. And then they don't listen to me. And it's not like I have this really insular, isolated opinion. There are millions who feel as I do, that we should be doing more for underrepresented and depowered populations in our society. They're all us. We are all. And we're not acting for the good of all right now. And all I can do is say, please stop damaging us. And then they don't listen. It's not only a feeling of political and existential impotence, but it's also an extremely fatalistic feeling. Especially with all this happening around the holidays, it's creating a sort of existential conflict of emotion. You know, you go see people you haven't seen in a while, and you get together with family and friends, and you remember how much fun it is, and how productive you can be in a collective with people who love and care about you. And then you realize that this country collectively is failing to love and care about all of its citizens. It makes me mad, and it makes me feel helpless and hopeless, and what I'm trying to do is create a direction to expend that energy in. So please, if the only thing we can do is call our representatives, let's do that. Let's call our representatives, okay? And even if, like me, you have representatives that don't listen to you, those calls are in some way recorded. Your opinion will go on record. And that will matter when they come up for re-election. Okay, you can remember, oh yeah, I called my representative's office that time and they didn't listen to me. And it will be on record. Your opinion will be on record as being conflicted by your representative's opinion, or your representative's actions at the very least. In order to make sure we know how unrepresentative our democracy is, we need to represent ourselves and our own opinions and our own beliefs. Inform your opinions with the social reality, right? There are social facts involved here. Do the math, be attentive, be critical to the issues, and act in a way that is not only to your own benefit, but to the benefit of others. Be empathetic. We have to act for the good of the collective if our representatives don't. So I hope you'll join me in this mission, and I hope in all other respects you have a very happy holiday, whichever you choose to celebrate. It's a holiday season. No matter what holiday you celebrate, there are a lot of holidays congregated around this time of year, and so this time of year collectively, for American society especially, is a time to think about making the world a better place, about the collective effervescence that we share around the holidays, and what we can do in order to make the entire country, all of the time, feel like we do at the holidays. That we're all working to benefit each other and ourselves together. And there's ways to do it. We're not out of resources yet. We may be running out of energy, but we're not out of options. And I think that that in itself is powerful and makes us stronger. To know that we have directions that we can go in. Even if we're not happy that those are the only directions we can go in, we can go in them the best we can. So thank you all for listening. World, I'll see you tomorrow.